Hi everybody, this is Austin Burns here. I just got back from a wonderful trip to Germany and I'm here to give you the top 10 list of things you need to know. Welcome to the Rick Steves edition. And hopefully it's less boring than his videos. Number 10 is not the most interesting thing about Germany, but it's certainly a thing that you need to know about. It's the bathroom, or die Toiletten as they call it. Now, unlike in America where restrooms are free and healthcare is not, in Germany it's just the opposite. So even though healthcare is a right, the restroom is not. Going to the restroom could set you back €50 or maybe more. But a great consolation prize is that the stalls go all the way down so you don't have to look at somebody's hairy legs that you don't want to. Also, don't be surprised if you have to go through multiple doors to get there. I don't know why, but Germans love their doors. Number 9. Number 9 is my personal favorite because it's the difference between ice and ice. So in Germany, EIS, or ice, is actually ice cream. So if you order a coffee with ice, it will actually be a coffee with ice cream, which is very yummy, but probably not what you meant. If you actually want coffee with ice, you have to say cold coffee. But even if you say cold coffee, they'll probably bring you a very small cup of hot coffee and a couple of cubes of ice. Also, it's good to note that to-go is not as much of a thing there. There are some restaurants where you say, "Can I get a cup of coffee to go?" And they actually tell you no. You have to sit there and drink it. It's actually a cool cultural difference where they enjoy their meals and their drinks, and sometimes conversations can go on for hours before they actually finish their meal. Now that can be really cool, but also very frustrating if you have somewhere to be. Number 8. That would be bikes, cars, and streets. So something that's really interesting about the streets in Germany is that bikes and cars and pedestrians all kind of share the street in this really weird kind of nebulous thing. What's really amazing about this is that no one seems to get angry. Nobody's honking, nobody's getting mad, nobody's yelling, nobody's giving you the finger. It's not like in Boston where it's a bunch of massholes. And it is a biking place. It is amazing. There are bikes everywhere. I think bikes are a much more popular mode of transportation than cars. They even have their own lanes. Number 7. This one made me really sad because you can't go to a restaurant and just have some water for free. Ordering water from the tap is not a thing in Germany. If you order water, they will either bring you a bottle of still water or a bottle of sparkling water. Granted, the water is really good, but it's kind of hard to budget drinking out of a very, very tiny bottle for a whole meal. There are no refills there, so you have to be very careful with this. Number 6. Plastics are very rare. So if you order a doggy bag, you could end up getting a paper plate with some aluminum foil over it. There aren't even plastic bags in trash cans, and trash cans, unlike in America, are not gigantic. They are very tiny and cute. Also, most drinks come in glass bottles, which is very cool unless you hate the environment. And then I guess it's not cool. Number 5. No cash, you say? Well, that's gonna be a problem. Unfortunately, if you don't have euros in Germany, it's gonna be a problem. The only places that seem to take credit cards are American businesses like Subway, Starbucks, and Dunkin' Donuts, which, by the way, there is an amazing Dunkin' Donuts in Berlin. It is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It puts all American Dunkin' Donuts to shame. It really is more like Krispy Kreme. They make the donuts fresh. They're just... Number 4. Now, number 4 is not the happiest subject, but it is really one that's important. They remember their history. They don't shy away from it. You go down any kind of block and you see outside businesses, outside homes. There are little gold placards on the street which say the Jewish families that used to live there. It's very touching and it's a great way to remember what happened. I am a person who came from the American South. And coming from the American South, there are monuments to Confederate soldiers everywhere, and there's hardly any kind of public acknowledgement of what went on with slavery and what the Civil War was actually about for our side. Many people, of course, will say that, oh, it's about states' rights, you know, all this stuff, but we all know it's a state's right to what? Own slaves. They don't forget their history, and they really do a good job of paying tribute to those that they have wronged in the past. And I think that it's something that as Americans we can really learn a lot from. Number 3, Reconstruction. Now this is an amazing story about what happened after World War II. So Germany was divided into the East and into the West. So you have the territories that were controlled by Russia, and you have the territories controlled by the US and the UK, and so on and so forth. It's important to note that many of the major cities were destroyed from 50 to 90%. So there are historic buildings that were there from the 1500s that were knocked down. There's a great deal of history that just went completely away in World War II. Luckily, right after World War II, the West starts to rebuild their side. So there's a lot of money coming in for the Reconstruction. Unfortunately, on the east side, that is controlled, of course, by Russia, there's not so much of an emphasis on Reconstruction. They don't really care about those buildings or that history. However, after the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and soon after the fall of the Soviet Union, Reconstruction also began to happen in the East. And finally, with a reunified Germany, there was funding to go around to all these different places. A wonderful example is the Frauenkirche, which was actually reconstructed with some of the original bricks from when it got bombed before. So part of the bricks are this really dark color, and the newly reconstructed part is this really bright kind of stone. What was really incredible about this trip was seeing these newly reconstructed buildings in this really old style. It's crazy to think that 20 years ago, many of these wonderful structures would not have been there. Number 2. So another really wonderful thing about Germany is that most people do speak English, and if they don't speak English, you would be amazed with how well pointing works. Like, I would like that one. This is number 1. This is number 1. Number 1 is all of the history besides World War II. So that includes Martin Luther, J.S. Bach, J.C. Bach, Frederick the Great, and so much more. Most of us already know a bit about Martin Luther. So of course he's the leader of the Protestant Reformation. He's famous for nailing his 95 Theses to this church in Wittenberg. What you may not know is that he was kidnapped and actually taken to this castle in Eisenach for his own protection. After Martin Luther decided not to recant his 95 Theses in his meeting with the Pope decided to strip him of all his earthly rights, which means that anyone on the street could come up to him and kill him without getting any repercussions for it. But the ruler in Eisenach did not want his most famous subject killed, so he decided to capture him and take him to the castle. There, Martin Luther assumed a new identity, he grew out his beard, and he was even knighted. Now, of course, everybody knows about J.S. Bach. We hear his music almost every Sunday in church. He was hugely influential to other composers, especially Beethoven. What you may not know is that his whole family was musical, and he ended up having 12 children, one of which ended up being so popular that he surpassed his father in his lifetime and was even a more influential composer of his generation. That composer, of course, was J.C. Bach, who ended up working for the Prussian king, or Frederick the Great, also known as the Potato King. Frederick the Great was a really interesting ruler, so he was a huge patron of the arts, a big fan of French culture and French literature. He invited Voltaire to stay at his palace, and Voltaire actually came and stayed in his court for around 2 years, although he decided he would rather stay at a friend's place, which... why would you not stay at a palace? Anyway, whatever, it's Voltaire. He can do whatever he wants. Frederick the Great was also the first person to introduce the potato to Prussia, so he was nicknamed the Potato King. And what's really cool is that a lot of people have laid little potatoes around his grave, some of which actually have little eyes and a little crown, which is really cute. Frederick the Great at that time was trying to avoid a famine, and he'd heard about this really cool new crop called the potato. And so he decided to really introduce this potato to his people, but he knew that they wouldn't really trust it unless he ate it. So he made a big deal of saying, these are potatoes, this is what I do with them, I like to eat them, you should eat them too. So those are just a few of the really interesting things that I learned about in Germany, and I hope that you will take the time to look at some of the links provided below and check these things out more in depth. Thanks again for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a great day and happy traveling.